We have received a request from one of our clients, and it says, we'd like to offer discounts for Black Friday / Black Week. The discounts should only be valid for the dates we specify. It would also be nice to restrict the discounts based on the product. We have our task, and we have an empty greenfield project. We'll start out by setting up Composer with Composer init, and I'll go ahead and accept all the default values, which we can always change later. Let's set up auto loading so we don't have to write require statements everywhere, and so that we have namespacing. Auto load PSR4, and red green code is my vendor name. You can write whatever you'd like there. It's going to be a discounts package, and we'll put all of that in the src directory. We're also going to want to have auto loading for our dev namespace, and that will also be PSR4. And we can copy this here because it's nearly the same, with the exception of it's going to be under a testing namespace, and this will be a test directory. We can add these directories here. And now we're ready to install our packages. Since it's already highlighted here, let's do data transfer objects. Must end with a namespace separator. Let's see what the problem is there. I must have forgotten the namespace separator. Here, all of these always must end with a namespace separator. Hey, that's good. So if you see that error, then you know what that is. We're back at it. Let's try that again. All right, success. The next package we're going to want is Nestbot Carbon, which is an awesome package for dealing with date time and date time strings. And last but certainly not least in this case is Phpunit, which will be a dev dependency, which means it won't be installed when we're in a production environment. So that takes care of our packages, and you can see that it has pulled in these packages with the versions, the newest version, since we didn't specify anything. And you can also see that the vendor file has now been populated with all of the dependencies. First created, then pop. Now let's start out by creating a test. The name of this will be, we'll start with the first part of the task, which was should only be valid for the dates we specify. So we want to do a date validation test. And the namespace is red green code, and you'll have to adjust this to your namespace. Red green code discounts testing. That looks right. And we'll want to extend the test case from PHP units. We'll start out by testing the positive case, so when a date is valid. Test valid date returns, what do we want to return? Returns true. Okay, we want to say the valid date returns true. The reason we pulled in the data transfer object is we want to make sure that anyone using this package is passing along valid information. So a valid object. We want a discounts object, and we'll create that using a static function, create. And what this needs to have is, first of all, it needs to have an account ID, because this particular customer is a platform and they have multiple accounts, and each account has their own ID, and we want to make sure that the one discount code does not work for all accounts, and make sure that they only work for a certain account number. And we want the ID for the code. We also want the code itself, and then we'll want the type. the type being either a percentage or amount based, and the value will either be, if it's a percentage, it will just be a simple integer. There'll always be integers, but it will be a simple integer like 20 for 20%. And if it's an amount based, an amount type, then it will be in cents, so we don't have to deal with floats and things like that. Also, we're going to want a begin date, or let's call it active from. Yeah, so that's a little more specific. Active from and active to. That looks right. All right, so that's what we want to have. We're programming right now, wishful programming. How would we like to use this package? And that looks pretty nice. So we're going to want to be able to test multiple versions of this. We'll want all of these tests to return true and be valid, but we want to test different scenarios, and we're not going to want to create the same exact test again and again. So what we'll do is we'll use a thing called a data provider that's provided to us by Phpunit. It's really nice. And this data provider works like a for each loop, and let's say get valid counts, get valid discounts. And what this does is it works like a for each loop. So we return an array of arrays. Inside of this array is this information that we want. And in addition to that, also what we expect to get back in return from this test. Expected, we'll call it expected. We'll specify all this data, and we can use as many as we want. Each time we run this test, it will loop through and run the test based on the information that we give here. So we need to accept this information up here and update the PHP doc block here. So now we are able to loop through each return and only have to write the test once, which is really nice. Okay, so for the account ID, we can just make it a UU ID1. And we can do the same thing for the ID, because right now we're only interested in testing the dates. For the code, let's say Black Friday 20, and it will be like a 20% off code. So the type will be a percentage with a value of 20. And it will be active from to okay. So here's where we bring in the Carbon package. And we want to just make this first test very simple and easy just to get things started. We want the active from, we want that to be, let's say it's been active for a month. So we know for a fact that it's active. So Carbon now sub month, and then date to string. All right. And then the active to will be a month from now. So same thing, just the opposite direction. Now, add month and date to string. All right. So now we have the add to, or active from and active to. Now we want to say what we expect. We expect it to return true. We can change this later, but for now, we'll just get things working. So now we are able to create as many models as we want. We'll start out with just one just to see the test pass. Okay, so we haven't yet tested anything. So we've created this discount. Now we need a way to validate the discount. We need a discount validator. We'll keep that general. We won't call it discount date validator because we already know that we're going to be validating more things later on. And we can use the validator one time, so we can call new discount validator. We would like to say discount validator validate. And we obviously would like to pass in our discount that we've created. So this is the setup for the test. So there's the setup, and here's the action that we're performing. And now we want to make an assertion. We want to assert that something is the way that we want it. So we want to say it's the same. We want to assert something is the same. There we go, assert same. And we want to make sure that what we expect, so the first thing is always what is expected, the first parameter, and then what we get. And validation status. So this is the validation status. We want to make sure what we expect is what we get. If we run this test we'll just use the command line for now, we'll see that the test fails. So let's get this test working. We can start out by creating this discount class. So let's go in here and we'll create a PHP class called discount. We only have to supply that once, I believe. The per directory, we only need to supply the namespace once, which is nice. Discounts. So that is the namespace. Everything looks okay there. And in this case, we want to extend the data transfer object. We want a static function called create, and we want this function to have all of these parameters. And let's give them public string. We also want to set up them as properties. Let's go here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. And then we can go like that. Oh, no, that didn't work how I wanted it. All right, let's go highlight these one at a time using Alt. Copy. Use Alt and Shift and drag down, and then paste. Oh, one too many, so I miscounted. Either way, now we have them. Unused element active from. That's fine. We want the value to be an int. Why is active from the only one that's highlighted like that? That's strange. Either way, we'll keep moving on. So we want to return new self, and that will be an array. And this array will be all of these being returned. And we can shift or alt shift drag down, and then if you click Control Shift W right arrow, that will highlight just the words. And then we can copy those, move over to, add a string, move over, and now we have the array syntax pretty quickly. So we can now import this class. So next we're going to make the discount validator. So new class discount validator, and it already fills in the namespace for us there. And so this discount validator, we're going to want to make that validation class. It was called validate, or sorry, the validation function called validate. And we are going to expect a discount object. We want to say validate dates. All right. And this will also take the same parameter. So we can add that method, and we're going to want to return a Boolean. What do we have? We have the active from being the discount active from. We have the active to. Being equal to the discount active to, and notice the beautiful type hinting active to because of the data transfer object. And we also want to know when this is being tested. So that's just now. Carbon now, and then to date time string, or to date string. If active from is less than or equal to now, then it should return true. Also, we want to make sure that the time hasn't expired. Active to should be greater than or equal to now. And if those things are true, we want to return true. And if not, we'll return false. All right. I believe that does it for that check, and we'll need to import that. And let's see, everything looks all right. So let's try to run this in the console. And we have our first working test. Great. Next, we'll want to test another date to make sure that things are working how we want. So we already know if it's within a month that things will be working fine. So let's see what happens when we'll close the margin a little bit. We'll say active from, we'll copy these, and we'll say 2 at the end of them. Instead of, let's sub a day, and let's add a day. Okay. And we will use those as the parameters here. Now let's see if that's still passing. Can make this a little smaller. We don't need the whole thing. Also passing. Well, that's good. What happens if it's the day of? What happens if the code is going to expire at midnight tonight? Let's try that out. So test 3. And we'll rename those tests later. Let's just add an hour. Let's add an hour for now. So we'll add an hour. So it's only an hour away until expiration. Would the code still be considered valid based on what we've done here? Let's test it. All right, still valid. Great. Let's add a minute. So it's 11:59, and it's the rebate expires in 1 minute, and we want 4. Jeez, Pete's. So it's 11:59. The code is supposed to expire at midnight. So we only want to add a minute. Add minute. Would the shopper still be able to validate their code? They would be able to do that. So within 1 minute, and let's just get crazy and go for 1 second. Add second. Can you do that? You can. You can add a second. So down to the second. Let's see if that will work. We'll have to rename those 5 and 5. So if it works down to the second, then I think we can be pretty confident. All right, it works down to the second. So we can be pretty confident that as long as the user uses the code within the given date range, that they will be able to cache the code. So we have our first valid test, or we'll call it a set of tests because we've tested multiple things here. So that's great. So now we want to test what happens if they use an invalid based on the date. So we can just go ahead and copy all this here because it will be the same. except we want to say test invalid date returns false. Instead of using gets valid discounts, we want to say gets invalid discounts. And we'll want to create that function. And we will return, we can copy that part. We will return our array of arrays, and we'll need an active from and an active to, so we can use that as well. And so for this one, we're going to say it begins being active in a month. And let's say add months in this case, and we can say 2 months. So it starts out next month, and then it will be valid for a month after that. We're going to expect it to return false. Let's see what happens when we just leave it as it is. Oh, we have a failure, which is to be expected because we asserted that true is false. Now, we want to establish trust with the customer. So it would be nice if we told them, hey, in this case, it's invalid, but it's going to be valid next month, so that they know, hey, next month I can come back and I can make this purchase using this discount code and everything will be okay. We'll adjust things a little bit, and instead of saying true, return a string that tells us a message, and it says is valid. And also here we want to say it's too early. We know those tests will fail, and we know we need to change the behavior of this test here. If it's between those, it should return is valid. All right. So then the first set of tests should pass. So let's test that real quick. We'll comment out this test, and we'll run our test suite again. And those failed because they should return is valid. And what is it returning? Is valid. Let's see why those are failing. True, returning that true is valid. Oh, I think I know why that is, because we're returning a Boolean, and now we need to change that to a string. So let's try that again. All right, 6 tests with 1 warning, and the warning is that this test sorry, I didn't comment out the test. I commented out yes. So here's the test. Sorry. So if I were to comment out this test, then we'll be able to run and get green. Yes. All right. So now we want to adjust our logic and this test. We have our test here, and what we're expecting is down here, and we're expecting it to say too early because the discount code is not yet valid. So we'll come here, and I want to check the validator. And right now it says if it is active, it's going to return valid. So let's say if active from is greater than, now return too early. Now let's see if we get green. All right, we got green. Last but not least, we'll check one that's too late. And then whoever's using the package can give the appropriate feedback to their customer. They won't just say too late. They'll say something like, sorry, but this discount code has expired. So 2 and 2. Active, we can go sub. It started out a month ago, and it ended a day ago. And then that will make it too late, right? That makes sense to me. So now it's too late. So if we run the test, it should fail. All right, we expect it too late, and what we actually got was expected in actual. Or I guess we got nothing. Oh, return false. So return return false in this case. Let's just say return not valid. And we should get that as a code, yeah. So not valid as our return statement. We would like a specific return, and so we will say if the active2 is the opposite here. If it is less than, return too late. So let's try to run that. Something's wrong with my logic here. Active2 should be greater than now if it's wrong. Yes. So, no, the active2 should be less than now. If it is less than now, return. Oh, there's an unexpected syntax error was the problem. What is the syntax error here? Oh, sorry. Sorry, let me back that up. I use Control X instead of Control Z. So this is why it's great having testing, because sometimes you do dumb things, or at least I do. You do dumb things and you can't figure out why something's not working. And then you have really nice error codes when you're using testing to tell you you've done something stupid, which happens pretty regularly for me. So if the active2 is greater than, that's what I wanted. And the other instance, no wait, active2 now should be, yeah, now should be greater, because now that means the date now is later than active2. Okay, so now we have green. So now we can say if it's in the correct date range, if it's too early, or if it's too late. Ending up here, we could clean up things a little bit. We already have, I think, pretty decent feedback here saying what we expect. We don't really need to write a message. Well, there will be many ways to improve it, but for now, we have a basis of our package here. So we can validate based upon the dates. So in the next episode, we will validate restricting it based upon a product. I hope to see you in the next one.